A student recently asked me a question that has made me think a lot, and I thought I would bring it to our group today. She asked me, where does Venerable Chödrön's authority come from? Meaning, where is her spiritual authority coming from? I thought, well, that's an interesting question. So I gave her my answer, but it spurred me to do a little research. Especially to what we as Western educated people in our Judeo-Christian culture might have in the background when we talk about spiritual authority. Because in Buddhism we have this idea, we recite, the chant in the practices of 37 practices of bodhisattvas. When you rely on them, your faults come to an end and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish spiritual teachers even more than your own body. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. It's like cherish them even more than your own body. That's a lot. That's a lot. So when I went to do this research, I discovered this whole world. It actually should be some long research paper that I probably will never do. But it's some very obvious examples in our culture about where this question about spiritual authority. First of all, there's the papal authority, right? The Pope, who, by reason of his office as Vicar of Christ, has full, supreme, universal power over the whole church, divine institution, supreme, full, and immediate universal power in the care of souls. And then the Pope invests other people with spiritual authority down the line, right? So we have that as a model, whether we're Catholic or not. It's kind of part of our culture. And then Protestant Bible students talk about all kinds of God-given authority. That includes civil or governmental authority. God, scripturally speaking, gives the husband authority in a family, assuming it's a one man, one woman family, but forget that. And then there's the authority of the church. And the underlying principle on all of this is submission to authority. So no wonder we get kind of weird about it. I never really thought about it that way, but this idea of submission to authority is sort of embedded, inbred, you might say, into how we think. So I thought, I did some research then on how they talk about the Dalai Lama. It's like, well, is His Holiness a spiritual authority? And on one hand, you can say, well, yeah, he is. Why? On the basis of his ethical conduct, on the basis of his spiritual teaching, on the basis of his lifelong practice. But does he have some kind of divine thing that makes him authoritative spiritually? And does his spiritual authority extend to like being able to make people do things? Well, no. No, he's acknowledged as the spiritual leader of the Tibetan people, but people do what they do. He has way less authority than the Pope to just say, oh, then therefore all Tibetans should be this way. He doesn't have that at all. And so he doesn't confer spiritual authority on teachers. He doesn't appoint teachers and say this one is this. It comes from their own qualities that anybody's recognized, right? So it's just brought up this whole interesting thing, like Venerable Chödrön's teachers sent her out to teach. But they didn't give her some, you are now a spiritual authority, on the basis of her qualities, on the basis of her skill, on the basis of who knows what. They sent her out to teach. And then, when she sends an Abbey monastic out to give a talk in the prison, she's not giving you spiritual authority. So I had to come down to the answer is, where does Venerable Chödrön's spiritual authority come in my life? I gave it to her. Nobody else. And she's not a spiritual authority for anybody else. I mean, it's not that I'm going to say, oh, here's my teacher, spiritual authority. No. Maybe for you, yes. Maybe for somebody else, not. But this question of where did that spiritual authority come from? From me. Well, I have the power to confer spiritual authority. On what basis? Does that make me special? No. But I found an interesting article. It's quite an old article, and I recommend people take a look at it. It's on Lion's Roar. It's from 20 years ago, an article by John Wellwood, who's a psychologist and also a Buddhist practitioner. He talks about spiritual authority as interrelational. That's the point here. It's a teacher has authority only for those who respond to his or her presence and teachings. Right? So as a disciple, literally translated as a learner, is one who recognizes he or she has something important to learn and chooses that person as the source of that learning. And so then the spiritual teacher derives certain relative authority through the actual help that they offer their students. Right? So it's a mutually dependent relationship. And Venerable has talked to us about many times. There is no leader without followers. There are no followers without a leader. There is no student without a teacher. There is no teacher without students. So consciously or unconsciously, and in Buddhism we try to pick our teachers deliberately by looking at their good qualities. We deliberately choose someone and give them this kind of authority. Why? Because we're on a journey that nobody else can lead us on. We choose our spiritual mentors, in Buddhism anyway, we choose our spiritual mentors because we're on a path to liberation. We choose our spiritual mentors because we're on a path to enlightenment. And as much as our parents may love us and have taught us as children, unless we're born to lamas, that's not something they can do for us. And no matter how great our teachers are in school, unless we're in some extraordinary monastic education program that's being led by a fully awakened being, they can't do it either. Our bosses can't lead us on this journey to liberation and enlightenment. So it's like this relationship, if we look at the Buddha, even the Buddha is the ultimate authority. When we say this when we recite the Pratimoksha, the Buddha said, do not say that I have left you without a teacher. I have given you the Vinaya. I have given you the Dharma. The Dharma is the authority. And so the teachers in our lives, the spiritual teachers in our lives who have enriched their own minds through practicing the Dharma, not just the academic study, but the lived experience of practicing these teachings, then we think, I have something to learn here. And we invest that person with our spiritual authority because they have something to teach that we can't get anywhere else. So in my response to this person, I said, without doing all the research, I said, I would say I give that authority. And it has grown, my capacity to give that authority again, has grown through my years of meditating on the kindness of a teacher. Through appreciation, it has become a giving of authority through the sense of gratitude for what I have learned and for how I am guided. So it's not even at the beginning of that relationship, I think, even the Dalai Lama, the first time you saw the Dalai Lama, we are inspired by his presence, most people. You just often weep the first time you are with him. But the appreciation of his holiness as a spiritual authority comes over time in listening to his teachings, hearing what he has to say, putting them in practice, listening to his effect on other people and on ourselves. That also grows. And it's not an act of submission at all. It's an act of appreciation and an opening or a willingness then to be guided on the basis of this trust that grows from appreciation and from experience. So I thought it was something really worth chewing on, this question. I found it really productive, and I wanted to share that with all of us. So that when we're saying, when we rely on them, our faults come to an end, well, we're practicing what they teach. Our good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Can we say that? I've seen good qualities grow in myself and in others. Cherish spiritual teachers even more than your own body. Why? Because they're taking us on a journey that no one else can lead us to. The liberation, the compassion that will help us grow our bodhicitta to our full awakening, to realize our full potential. So, we give the authority because that's a journey we want to take. Make sense? Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's all I have to say. Question? Refutations? Yes.
Body is just here for one life, but the teacher follows us to enlightenment. Well, we follow the teacher to enlightenment, but they're helping us life after life. So maybe that's that last line in the verse.
Cherish them on more than your own temporary body.